Hi. Upcoming now in April, I'm going to start teaching a course on time and the gods in Proclus. In particular, I'm going to be talking about the gods of time, all the different gods that Proclus thinks are involved in the creation and sustenance of time in all its features, in its division between past, present, and future, in its continuity, in its flow, in the fact that there are temporal patterns. All kinds of gods are involved in creating and sustaining time in his philosophy. This is the third of a series of courses, and the other two courses are available right now for people who want to buy them after the fact and have access to the Google Drive, which includes each of them 7 lessons of about an hour and a half each, and a lot of material, PDFs and texts of my own even, about the subjects I teach. So the first course was just the time and the gods in Proclus, and it was an introduction to Platonist cosmology, right? So in the first class, I talked about what Platonists like Proclus understand by the world, and how we can use phenomenology and transcendental philosophy to modern schools of philosophy to better understand this and better get a grasp of what Proclus is saying, how what he's talking about isn't necessarily the world of bodies that we investigate with contemporary physics, but is something like the structure of human experience. And I also gave there an introduction to Platonist theology and Proclus' idea that we understand what gods are by understanding our own selves and our own impetus to say I and to identify ourselves as an I. And then I weave those together in a lesson on the cosmic gods, on all the gods that are involved in sustaining the world in general. Like the world itself is a god, and the planets, and gods responsible for life down here on Earth, like Poseidon. So I talked about the cosmic gods in general, and then we got into time. I showed arguments about how Proclus thinks that the flow of time, as it's divided into past, present, and future, requires there to be formal, final, and efficient causes. That is, it requires there to be causes not only for the beginning of things, like one thing pushes another, or one thing moves another, but also there have to be reasons for why changes happen, aims and goals of changes, and also changes have to have a certain pattern, right? They have to conform to some kind of archetype in order for us to be able to talk about past, present, and future at all. Then we saw Proclus' view that in order for us to talk about a now, like we say now and we mean this one moment of time that encompasses the whole world, for Proclus that requires there to be a soul of the world, a common life that the whole world lives through. And going on, I showed that for Proclus, the idea that we can measure time, and that time actually is some kind of uniform flow, requires the distinction between heaven and earth. And so we see how this ancient distinction between the world above the moon and below the moon actually is grounded in the very nature of time for Proclus. And I wrap that all up with a consideration of the ethical dimensions, the practical consequences from all these arguments. So that was the first course, Time and the Gods, an introduction to Platonist cosmology. And the second course was the common root of kairos and chronos, right? So kairos is this idea of time, of an opportune moment, the idea that things have a proper or right time for them to happen. Whereas chronos is more this idea of time as flowing equally in a homogeneous way, such that 1 hour is an hour is an hour, right? And my question was, so Proclus thinks that time is both these things. He thinks that things happen because it's time for them to happen, so each moment has its own quality, and also that each moment is like any other, time is homogeneous. So how does he think these two things together? After setting up this tension in the first 2 classes, I started to introduce Proclus' notion that the flow of time is actually identical with the cognitive life of the world soul. So if in the first course I mentioned the world soul is what guarantees there being a single now in the whole world, In the second course, I go into more detail to how does this world soul connect with the flow of time. And Proclus has an argument to say that the flow of time itself is just the world soul knowing one thing after another. But it's a very special kind of knowledge, and it's the highest kind of knowledge that we humans can have, and that allows humans, when they have it, to do something better than knowing. It allows them to even become instruments of the gods, such that someone can say, it is not I who act, but Apollo through me, right? I am just, as it were, a little pen in Apollo's hand. This takes us to the question of how are the gods present in the world? How can things be instruments of the gods? And this then connects with a question of astrological symbolism. So sometimes you'll find long lists of symbols or things that are associated with a given planet or sign, and sometimes there's no, we can see a logic to most of these significations, but there's a lot that's left out. And I bring in Proclus's account of what's called divine chains or divine tokens to explain how he would see this, and this also explains how the gods are present in the world. And this is a key element in understanding this divine cognition of the world soul. And it's when we really understand this divine cognition of the world soul as knowing these tokens, these ineffable signatures of the gods, that we can understand how this is at once something entirely uniform, knowing only unities, but also at every moment it's knowing a very unique unity. Said in this way, that's very complicated and very difficult to understand. It's very dense, but that's why I have 7 classes on the subject. So these are the 2 courses I've already taught. They're available at half price if you want to buy them now and have access to them. So that means that they are available for 250 Brazilian reais or $50. And so payable by PayPal or Pix, or Wise bank transfer, and then you get access to the whole Google Drive, and of course I'm available to answer any questions. And then, if you watch any of these courses, or both of them, and enjoy them and want to see the next one will then be going through Proclus's whole divine hierarchy and showing at each level the gods that are responsible for time. Starting all the way up there with limit, right? With the, as it were, the divine ground of the fact that there's something like a horizon, a limit, and all the way down here to the fates that weave our human destinies, and also the role of heroes and spirits and messengers of the gods in sustaining time. So I'm really looking forward to teaching this course in April, and I just wanted to remind people that the past courses are also available. And you can find a link to request them below. Thanks.